When you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras, by Theodore Woodward. This famous sentence, coined by Dr. Theodore Woodward, a professor of medicine, teaches that the simple answer is likely the correct one. In medicine, a zebra is a rare or uncommon or exotic disease. It is much more likely that a patient's symptoms are due to a common and simple condition, a horse, rather than an uncommon, rare or exotic condition, a zebra. This medical aphorism shows perfectly Occam's razor in practice. Occam's razor can help us in life situations where we have to make really fast decisions, which need to have a high probability of being correct. Occam's razor is a philosophical razor. Philosophical razors are a rule of thumb that help us in complex reality to shave off, so to speak, unlikely explanations. The following is a definition of Occam's razor, coined by William of Occam, a 14th century theologian and philosopher, though not the first who discovered it. Entities must not be multiplied beyond necessity. In other words, among competing hypotheses, the one with the fewest assumptions should be selected. Occam's razor advises that when we have two hypotheses that explain the exact same thing, we should prefer the simpler hypothesis over the complex one. Why? Because first, the simpler one is easier to verify, and second, it is more likely regarding base rates. What are base rates? Let's show that in an example. Consider the case of person A who died in a car accident. Simple solution. Person A died due to driver error, the horse. The more complex solution. Person A died due to a rare medical condition that caused a sudden loss of consciousness, the zebra. The even more complex solution. Person A died due to a rare medical condition combined with a sudden mechanical failure in the car. In 100 cases of car accidents, fatalities. Those following numbers are totally made up, they are just here for the sake of the argument. The simple explanation, the driver error, is the most common and likely, 80 out of 100. Then we got 17 who died of other reasons, which are not important here because we can disprove those hypotheses which are for these reasons. Again, just for the sake of the argument. The more complex explanation, a rare medical condition, is less common, 2 in 100. The even more complex explanation, a rare medical condition and mechanical failure, requires two rare events happening simultaneously, making it even less likely, 1 in 100. Each additional assumption decreases the overall likelihood of the scenario, making simpler explanations generally more probable according to Occam's razor. This principle helps us prioritize explanation with fewer assumptions, while recognizing that more complex scenarios, though possible, are less likely. Let's take the medical aphorism from the introduction and make it specific. For example, a person displaying influenza-like symptoms during an epidemic would be considered more likely to be suffering from influenza than an alternative, rarer disease. Making minimal diagnosis reduces the risk of overtreating a patient, causing panic, or causing dangerous interactions between different treatments. Again, in this example, we can see base rates. Influenza is much more likely. Another situation is that our smartphone doesn't want to charge. Let's start with a complex explanation. The battery of the phone is defect or the phone's software has a bug. Occam's razor, simple explanation. Charging cable or adapter is damaged. Change and try again. Occam's razor is a mental model. It's a rule of thumb. It is practical in many ways, but when we overuse it, we can just get cut. So it is of course not always be applicable. First, we can really only compare or use this razor on two hypotheses which explain the exact same thing. When hypothesis 1 explains an apple and when hypothesis 2 explains a banana, we can't possibly use this razor because we can only use this razor when both hypotheses explain an apple, for example. And second, sometimes the complex solution can be likely be correct. In medicine, for example. Of course, horses are much more likely, but we are not talking about that a zebra is not likely at all. It is unlikely, but not impossible. So we have to also be aware of the possible condition of a zebra, for example in medicine, and only put away this possibility when we completely rule it out. When you hear hoofbeats behind you, in most cases you should think horses, not zebras, unless you are out on the African savanna. Now we talked a lot about base rates and possibilities. When we are forced to make a fast decision, it helps for sure to use Occam's razor to orient our decision on the base rates, on something which is common, on the simple solution, when the simple solution is a common one. When something is to 80% the case, then something is to 80% the case. But of course we are mistaken when we think that the 20%, for example, or even 1% is impossible, because it's just much more unlikely. So in a fast environment where something has to be likely to be correct, where we have to make a really fast decision, Occam's razor can help us for sure. But we have to be really careful that we don't overuse it, as I said before, because there is sometimes the case that the person has an extremely rare disease, or that the person died because of a mechanical failure plus getting unconscious. So it can be, but it's just much more unlikely. Do you had any situations in the past where you consciously or unconsciously use Occam's Razor? Can you think of any situations of the future where you can probably apply it? When you're interested in more mental models like this, check out this playlist. When you're interested in another philosophical razor, namely Hanlon's razor, check out this video. As always, thank you so much for watching this video today, and I wish you a fantastic day.